Play. Is that going to work? Yes. I think that's working. All right, so we're going to look at Java quickly. This, ideally, I would have liked this so you could be sort of programming along the same lines, but at the same time. But you know, as I said, let's start. This is the IDE, the Integrated Development Environment you're going to be working with. Last year you used RobotC and DevPas, is it? Dev Pascal or something like that. This is a lot more mature. It's got a lot more complex sort of tools in there to help you program. And yeah, it's huge. I don't know everything it can do. It's massive product. It's an open source, free thing, so everyone sort of contributes their own bits and pieces to it. So there's lots of stuff going on in it. It can be used for Java. It can also be used for, well, we're doing Android, but Android's sort of a plug-in to Eclipse. You can also get plugins for Python. With some tweaking, you can get C++ and C working in there, and there's probably a whole bunch of other languages that I'm not aware of. It's a sort of it's a huge product that people can tweak and muck around with. So yeah, Eclipse. You can either download it from eclipse.org or from the Android developer site. The one we're going to be using it's from the Android developer site because it's got the Android stuff sort of built into it, and you don't have to configure it. I mean, let me know when we did Android. Configuring it is a massive problem, and the download from the Android side has just got it all sort of packaged. So that's where I suggest download it. All right. So I based this presentation in comparing sort of, or looking at Java, just the syntax, I suppose, comparing it to Pascal mainly. But I mean, you can sort of relate it to RobotC as well. Anyway. So this is just a quick comparison of your basic program in Java and Pascal. So whereas Pascal, you'd have program hello, begin, write line, hello world, read line, end. And that's fine. The Java on the other side, you've got to have public class in there and call it examples. I don't know why I call it different, but it's basically the same hello world. And you've got to have that main program in there, the main method here, the public static void main. You've got to have that there in a Java program, and to get something outputted to the console, which is the equivalent of right one there, it's the system.out print line. I mean, there's print as well, and you get different options. But yeah, just quick sort of overview on the syntax. Java, as opposed to Pascal, Java, and you would have got this in RobotC, a lot more brackets involved, a lot of these curly braces, or yeah, I think they're technically curly braces. I'm not sure. Brackets, curly brackets. RobotC, because both RobotC and Java are C-based languages, and C uses these brackets. Pascal doesn't, and other languages like Python don't either. So it's just because it's a C-based language, you're going to be typing a lot of brackets in your code. All right, and each of these keywords: public class, public static void. This is all something Eclipse does. Has anyone used Eclipse quickly? Yeah, I know you have, yeah. Okay, that's cool. Eclipse is good because it does sort of highlight these keywords, like public class, public static void. It highlights them in purple, and it puts the out and the hello world in blue. That's just something the interface does to help you code so you can quickly identify certain things. And I mean, Pascal did it as well, but just not. It's not as complex as Java. But for Java, you need those keywords, the public class, public static void, in there for it to work. It's part of the syntax. So the quick structure of a Java program is this: if you create a brand new Java program or Java code in Eclipse, this is what you're going to get. The public class examples, you get these comments there, the slash and the asterisk. I was going to say star, and I knew that was wrong. And then the @param args, that's just standard comments. Public static void main, string, args, and then auto-generated method stub. That's just the quick thing you automatically put in. That's your basic structure. Every single code file of code you write is going to have that basic structure. Okay, so you're going to have to get used to it. So what else? I was going to say something else in there. Oh yeah. I'll put it there, second point. Every Java program has to have a main method. Like in Pascal or RobotC, you have to have a main method. Same as in Java, again, because it's a C-based language. That's just one of the things C does. And Pascal, you have to have the main, begin, and end. you have to have that. That's the starting point. So yeah, it's something that Java does. Like I've already mentioned, something to output to the console, you do system.out.println. There's a reason why it's system.out.println rather than just writeline or in Pascal. What is it in Robot C to get something output to the screen? It's NXT display string at, I think. Does that sound familiar? Sorry, it's hard sometimes for me to switch between programming languages. But yeah, so there's a reason why it's system.out.println rather than just println. And that's all got to do with object orientation, which is what this unit is about. And system and out, those are very important things in terms of Java. But to get something outputted to the console, you just put system.out.println. But when we start looking at objects and classes, that makes a lot more sense of why you have to have that. And yeah, whatever's in the quotes will get outputted. And you can compound it, so you can put you can say hello world in quotes plus a variable or comma variable. I can't remember Java off the top of my head which one it is. I think it's a plus. Yeah, I can't remember. Don't quote me on that one. Sorry? Yeah, again, it depends on the programming language, and I always forget which one. It's one of these bad. Yeah, I'm pretty sure. Yeah, can't be certain. It's one of the bad things about knowing a few different programming languages, and I'm not an expert, 100% expert in all of them. I get them mixed up a bit, but you know, that's okay. Anyway, so you can sort of build them up into more complex things. Input is slightly more complex. I've just put in there, you've got to prompt the user first. You don't have to, but you know, it's always good to prompt the user. And you use this, the third line of that is scanner user input equals new scanner system in. All that does is create this variable. We'll talk about these in a lot more. It's an object, but we'll talk about them more in detail. Creates this thing called user input, and then you can say on the next line, string username, and that's just creating a new variable called username and getting the next thing that the user types in and storing that into username. And then, would you like to play a game? Oh yeah, it is a plus, look at that. If I read ahead on my slides, I'll be able to see, would you like to play a game? And then you can close the quotes plus username. So that will add whatever is in the value, its username, onto the end of string. Now, I should point out as well, if, hopefully not just then, but if I say some keywords that you don't understand, because I wasn't your teacher last year, I don't know what terms and things that your teachers used. If I say words and you don't understand me, please ask me for clarification, because I might use different words. So I just use the word variable. Hopefully you all know what a variable is. No. Good. Something that's fundamental to programming. Hopefully you've got that. But I might start using different words. If I use a term that you don't know, please ask me, because yeah, I don't know what you were taught last year exactly. So yeah, we'll look at objects later, and username can be reused. Okay, variable declaration, different to Pascal, but more like Robot C. You put the data type first. Okay, so you put the data type for user's age as an int or an integer. And yeah, no matter what you're creating, the data type always goes first. You can't declare the same variable twice. You can't have two users' age as even the same data type or different data types. So you can only declare the data type once. So even these more complex things, like with the scanner object that we created or that was in the last bit of code, this int subject scores, the square brackets is an array. And I've gone completely blank how you define an array in Pascal. It's been a couple of years since I've done Pascal. How do you do it in Pascal? You type an array, is it? Is that, seriously? I can't remember.
I think it's like bracket, the word of the array you want, like the name you want to name it, and then array or something like that.
Okay. Sounds right. Okay, let's say Liam's right. But in Java and other C-based languages, you put the square brackets, open and close square brackets after the variable name. So subject scores is now an array, and we're creating a new integer array with 10 elements. Okay. Remember, arrays have elements. Yes. Does element make sense to you? Yes. Excellent. Good. I'm getting some nods. That's good. Thank you. And at each spot of the array, what's the term to use for each individual spot of the array? Each individual entry. Starts with I. It sounded, yeah, index. Thank you. Index. So these are just some key words. The array has 10 elements. Each element of the array has an index. The array is 10 elements long. The maximum index is no 9. Why is it 9? Starts at 0. The first element of the array always starts at 0. I think Pascal, you had some flexibility there. You could actually start it at 1. It was kind of, it's not good, but you could do it. For Java, the first index in an array is 0. If you're not sure about arrays, they're going to come up this semester. So we'll look at that. We might do a sort of a refresher course on arrays because they are quite complex. So we can look at that again. So yeah, arrays, elements, index. So there's some keywords there. I should, before I go on to the next thing, I can't remember if I talked about this already, but I get bored when I get distracted. Sorry, not bored. Distracted is a better word. I get distracted when I'm writing these presentations and preparing for school anyway. So I switch between this and Reddit mostly. And I just put in silly pictures into my presentations or my work or Star Wars. Well, you don't get distracted by Star Wars. You watch Star Wars and get distracted by work. Star Wars is more important. So anyway, so as I said, I'm on Reddit and I find a funny picture and stick it in there. So, you know, just as long as you go, that's sort of enough for me. That's fine. Decisions. So if then else's. I'm annoyed at myself already. If then else. Same as sort of robot C for decisions in that. If you have to have open closed brackets around the condition. Condition is a word that you've heard before, yes? Excellent. Think so? Well, in terms of programming. User's age greater than 18 is the condition. That has to equate to true before it goes into that block of code between the two curly brackets. And what was it? Oh, you can have ands, ors, and all that sort of stuff, and you've got to have brackets around each individual bit as well. So somebody, oh yeah, I'm annoyed at myself with this because I've got my formatting wrong, or actually not wrong, just not up to the standard that I like. Can anyone see where the formatting problem is?
Is the curly bracket meant to be down on all of them?
No, don't have to do that. Jack had his hand up next.
I don't know, should you be using greater than or equal to 18? I said 18
Well, yeah, that's a logic problem with the code, but that's not a formatting problem. But yeah, you are right. It's as some of you may know, and I've already mentioned, I am anally retentive. I like my code set up a different way. Like Liam's question was, this bracket here should be down on the line down here under the I. That's a personal preference. It depends on the language too. Some languages have standards you use. And I think Java, I'm pretty sure, Java's standard is the brackets there. C#, for instance, I think that one's down on the next line. That's their standard. But it doesn't make any difference to the code. But I've got a formatting problem, which is really annoying me now that I'm going to have to fix up, retake the screenshot, and re-put it back in the presentation.
The space after the full stop. Like, so
No, well, I'm known. Now I've seen two. Jack, you're on my list. That annoys me now. Well, no, but it's got to do with the space. This really annoys me. It doesn't make any difference to the code, but I've got a space before the greater than symbol, but not afterwards. This is really annoying, and I can't not see it now. And now, thanks to Jack, I can't not see that. This is really annoying to me. I'm really anally retentive about my code, and I may judge you on your code. Well, I do have to judge you on your code because that's what I do as a teacher. But, you know, formatting is really, really important. Formatting a code is really important. I don't know what Billiana and Mark thought last year. I'm really picky about formatting of code.
Does
Yes.
this mean you'll fail us if we put a space in the wrong place?
Nope, I'm not going to fail you. I just had this conversation with my year 11s. and this might something you're not sort of aware of, the year 11s particularly, but at college you can't, you don't lose marks or anything like that. I'm not going to fail you on a particular point. You all have started now. You've all got a V grade. Every single person in the class, you've got a V grade. You start at nothing, and you earn marks. You don't start at 100% and lose marks. You start at nothing and earn marks, which is the idea of education. You start with no knowledge. You are empty vessels to fill up, and you learn things, and then you demonstrate that knowledge back to me, and I give you a mark based on how much you learn or you can demonstrate. So you start at nothing. I'm not going to fail you because you're spacing the wrong spot. But if there are 20 marks in the assignment assigned to formatting of code, you might not earn 20 marks if the space is in the wrong spot. No, not that. I'm not that anally retentive. Like if you submitted this code, I'd give you 100% for the formatting of that code because it's fine. It annoys me though that I wrote that code and I put it in the presentation without fixing it. Thank you, Jack. You're on my list. It's a mental list. It's a very important list. All right, anything else? Oh man, I didn't even fix up for this one. Anything else? Nothing too much else there. But yeah, I mean, you shouldn't see too much difference between this and Robot C. I think the syntax for this and Robot C is exactly the same. I just wanted to give you an indication because I'm not sure in this room if everyone did Robot C. Did everyone do NXTs? Everyone have done NXTs? Yeah, excellent, excellent. But because with the problems with Robot C, I know you had a very disjointed semester. I thought it'd be a good idea to put this in anyway because yeah, it wasn't a good semester for particularly the software because it was not good. Let's just put that. I'll make it a really basic sort of. It wasn't good. So yeah, so I just put this in to see it. And my space, thank you, Jack, is still there, but it's missing from there. I think it migrated. I think that's the problem. It should have been up there next to the 18, but it moved down to congratulations. That's a really bad typo if the typo does go down one line and across about 20 characters. That's a really bad typo. So yeah. Oh yeah, ands, ors, and nots. That's the format for, or the syntax, sorry, for an and in your if statement. So the brackets go around both conditions, and both sides of the and have to equate to true. Same as with Robot C, same as Pascal if you did that. Both sides have to equate to true for it to execute the first block, otherwise it's false for the end anyway. Nested decisions, very quickly. I fixed up the space in the 18 there, did I? Yeah. Yes, excellent, I fixed it up there. Fantastic. The space is still next to congratulations. That's really annoying. And it's still there. So I've just got else if, that's how you do else ifs in Java. Oh man, I've got a bracket, I've got a space after the 18 there. Yeah. Oh. But here, look at that. Look at that. Look at it. Space there. It looks wrong. It looks wrong because. I'm gonna have to, I'm gonna have to calm down. I'm gonna have to accept my limitations that I didn't check the spaces, and I'm gonna have to move on. What? Someone else said something wrong with my code. Come on, no, I'm not going to attack you. It's okay. It's okay. I'm not going to pick on you. Shut up, Jack. What did I do wrong?
No full stop in the last line after involved.
True.
And graduation.
True.
Yeah, you're an adult. I think there's a space on there.
Mm-hmm.
As long as the code works.
No, not as long as the code works. Code has to work, absolutely correct. But interface is really important as well. For code like this, it's only output in the console, it's not that exciting. But when we're going to Android, when it's a graphical user interface is just as important. How the information is displayed is just as important as the code. Okay, it has to work, but it also has to look good. So this is really annoying. You have to be consistent. There's a reason why, marketing teams, they design the interface. Maybe not on the computer, but they design, this is how we want the program to look. It's the developer's job to work out how to do that, but we want it to look like this. Interface is just as important. And for code, consistency, because it makes it easier to read if it's consistent. Otherwise, all you can do is stare at that space after the 18. That's all you can do. Anyway. Yes. Don't. What's up? What?
Is this supposed to be a space between the comma and the quotation marks? Marks after the year and out?
Doesn't make us. No, it shouldn't be. It's print line.
Shut up. I'm moving on.
It should just use print if you get
I can only imagine on this line that was supposed to be just a print,
Yeah.
and so I was going to print this out as all one line, but
you didn't do that.
I stuffed that up. No. I'm really not that annoyed about it, but it is annoying me. It weighs on my mind. I'm going to have to fix this up. Anyway, switches, case switches. I don't know if they're called, if you refer to them as case statements or case switch statements. In Java, I think technically, well, in general, they're called case switch statements, but switch is the key word. Did you do case switches in Pascal or Robot C? Similar, yeah. I mean, the syntax would be vastly different, but you probably didn't do so much in Robot C. You don't usually get into case switches in Robot C, but yeah. So the switches and whatever's in the brackets, which in this case is user selection, that's the variable or the value in that variable is the one you're going to be testing against. So if user selection is 1, then it's going to run that code in there. You entered 1. And then break. You have to have the break in there, otherwise if you don't, it'll just run every single piece of code. So if I entered a 1 and the case 1 didn't have break and none of them had break, it would say you entered 1, you entered 2, you entered 3, you entered 4, you entered 5, and then you would made an invalid entry. So you've got to make sure you put the break in there after every single case is over. It's kind of silly. It does make sense because sometimes you do want it to run the rest of the cases. Sometimes you don't, but yeah, and
break the entire switch then, and then continues on from afterwards.
Yeah, it'll jump out. So if it hits this break, it'll jump out down to here and just continue running the code. So that's what a break does. I don't know. Again, Pascal I haven't done for a while, but break jumps out of the current block of code. So it sort of goes down to the next the next bracket, and it'll jump down to there, and then just continue running the code if there's any there. So yeah, that's what a break does. You can also break out of loops, and that sort of thing. So yeah. Quickly, speaking of loops in there. For loop. That should be, again, I'm not sure how much you got into it in Robot C because you don't usually use for loops in Robot C. Pascal you might have, but that's the basic sort of structure. You can either define the variable inside the for loop, or you can use a pre-existing variable, and it will run for how many times will this for loop run for? How many iterations will this loop run for? 20? Or 19? 20 or 19? Anyone get a more exact correct, like maybe not correct, one of those is correct, I'll tell you, 19 or 20. Which one is it?
20 times until it goes up to 19 and starts at 0.
Maybe. Maybe. Should we test it? Yeah. And if you had Eclipse running, this would be the point where you type in that code and run it. But we'll find that out later. Does it run 19 or 20 times? It starts at 0, absolutely. And it runs until that middle condition, the loop is less than 20, it runs until that is false.
So it runs 20 times.
So when it gets to 19, when loop counter gets to 19, it finishes the loop, goes up there, increases loop counter by 1, it now becomes 20, and then that middle condition is now false, and so it'll jump out of it. So it gets to 19, and then jumps out, so it would run 20 times. Anyway. Just the thing. We can test it. We can get it to output the value and make sure it runs. But anyway, if we had Eclipse running. Loop, while loops, nothing too exciting there. I'm just showing you syntax. That code there is the equivalent of the for loop before. It just increases the number by 1 and does whatever you need to do. But the important thing with the while loop and a do while loop next is you have to, inside the code, you have to affect the loop counter in this case. There is a technical term for that variable, but I can't remember what it is. It's like the loop modifier or something, but that's not right. But yeah, you have to affect that variable inside the loop, otherwise you get an infinite loop. And do while loop is just the same, but what's the difference between a loop and a do while loop? Anyone?
A while loop won't run if it's like not true, but a do while will run at least once.
Yes, and that's the big key difference between it. A do while loop will run at least once because the condition is run after you do the code. So it runs the code inside the loop and then does the condition, whereas a while loop tests at the beginning. So it's possible for a while loop never to run, but a do while loop will always run at least once. So that it's not a huge difference, but it could make or break your code depending on what happens. And nested loops. You know, nothing too exciting in that one. So, yeah, and as I said, silly picture. So, one big trick with nested loops is, and I do this all the time, and it takes me ages to work out. First of all, counter is always a bad variable name to have, but anyway, like I've written this sometimes when I've got int counter 2 equals 0, counter 2 is less than 50, counter 1 plus plus. And so I've accidentally increased this variable inside the inner loop, and that makes your computer go nuts, or your program go nuts. And you can't. And it's really hard to read to debug when you've got the same variable name, only slightly different from another one. So yeah.
Is it like I and J? The one you use like forward?
No.
Because when I was doing C++, that was like default.
Yeah, it's I and J. It's common to use that, let's say, common to use that for loop variables, but I wouldn't say it's good, but it's common.
Okay.
Yeah. We'll look at variable names, particularly Java, and I've taken that picture down. There's again, as I said, every language has its own standards. Java has its own standards for naming of variables, and you should adhere to that all the time. But INJ, if you're running a quick simple loop just to test something, if you're typing a quick simple loop to test something, INJ are fine, but I wouldn't put that in a proper piece of code, basically. Now, methods. Methods is a new word. I don't think you would have heard this one before. Methods is the term in object-oriented programming that's used for a function, a procedure, a sub-procedure, a subroutine, a sub-program. What are the other ones? A function. A few other ones. Method is the name that you should be using from now on in object-oriented programming. It's just when they invented object-oriented programming, they thought, oh, you know what, we've got to rename everything, even though they're the same thing. But methods is the word you use. There's reasons for it, but yeah. Anyway, so to define a method, this is a method. The name of it is method example. Public static void, as I said, those or a sort of combination or some of those words might get replaced by other ones. But those three keywords or three keywords will be there before any method name. And so yeah, function now called methods. We'll talk about public static void main later. And the open close brackets must be included even if there are no arguments. Arguments are variables that the program or the method needs to run. So you could require it to have an integer to run, or if this method added two values together, just added two integers, then you could have this method requiring two integers, and you'd put that inside in the brackets, not the curly brackets. Put that inside the brackets. So yeah, but we'll look at that. Calling methods. You do it like this. Inside the main method, you just write method example, open close brackets. And Eclipse is really good. It puts it sort of in italics to say it's a method name, and I recognize that it's a method name. So it's one of those interface things. And again, the brackets must be included even if you're not passing anything to it. Methods with arguments. Here's an example. I've called it methods with arguments. Look at that. And, geez, I've named these variables and methods really explanatory. Int required information. So I need, for that program to run, the method with argument, or that method to run, I need to give it an integer. It cannot run without that integer. Okay, so it's not an optional thing, it's a required thing. Even though that all this method does is output it to the console. So it's a pretty useless method, but it's just an example. And again, just like defining a variable, the data type goes first. Int is always first. And you can have multiple ones. All right. And that's how you call a method with an argument. You say method with argument 20, and 20 is now just going to be outputted as a screen. Methods with return values, exactly the same, except the return is a keyword. On the last line, it returns 20. I don't know why I was into the number 20 when I was writing this, but I was, apparently. So you can return 20. Now, it can be any data type you return, but it's just whatever you return here, this 20, this data type has to match what's written here on this third keyword. Okay, this says int. Previously it said void, which means nothing. Int means it's going to return an integer. If I left that line off and just commented out or something like that, Eclipse would report this method has an error because it's not returning anything. Likewise, if I return Firefly as a string, it would say, no, the data types don't match. You've said int there, but you're returning a string. So, yeah, that's another thing Eclipse does. It's really quite good. And if your method is going to return a value like this, it's going to return 20, you can actually use that in your code when you're calling it. You can say method with return and get it the response or the result that gets returned to store into another variable. And you can also use it in a print line statement to output to the console. You can say print line open bracket. The answer is close quote plus method with return. So to add the result onto that string. So to add the 20 on, for instance. Yes.
What are the most general useful situations where you use calling methods like with a response?
With a response, look, there's no real easy answer for it, but basically the idea behind methods is you give it data, possibly. It does, well, same with sort of all programs. All programs have sort of three functions, I suppose. They input data, whether that be from the user or from another program or another function or another method or from the hard disk. It inputs data, it processes it, and it outputs. Now, sometimes you don't need to input it, you don't need to output it, but it needs to have those sort of three main phases. So there wouldn't be a general sort of most common thing. It depends on. I don't want to get too far in advance, but it depends on the situation, basically. And you sort of you'll learn when it's appropriate and when it's not. But yeah, but we'll get into that. As I said, I would have liked to have got you guys coding while I was doing this to practice a few things. All right, quick summary. Java has a lot of brackets, and you'll get sick of typing them, and you'll get sick of trying to work out which ones match up with which ones. There's a great keyboard function in Eclipse. I think it is Control-Shift-F. I think. Basically, what that does is it reformats all your code and lines up your brackets and puts spaces in when they're supposed to be in and all that sort of thing. So we'll go through that. Yeah, Java can do everything that the other languages can do. And you can actually program the robots, the NXTs with Java. So you could have learned Java to do that, but it's a bit fiddly and not fantastic, apparently. I've never done it, but Robots is a better one. Anyway, so this is where I would have shown you, got you to create a program. You know, hurrah, you got to create a program. Cool. That's how you do it. You press New Project, you type in a name, and you press Finish. It's not hard, but it would have been good to do it, and I would have quickly shown you how to write some code. But anyway, what we'll do, and there's an exercise in there, but you know, there's no point because you don't have Eclipse. So, any questions before I stop?